Okay, folks. So over the weekend, I actually sat down and watched the Netflix documentary "Being Eddie." Side note, I believe two great documentaries are supposed to come out this month. First, the Eddie Murphy one, and I think Selena has one coming out as well. I don't know what date it's supposed to drop. It could already be out right now. I'm recording this on November 16th, so it could be available to stream on the platform, but I am planning to check that out as well. Mainly because, look, I grew up watching the movie, so I'm more from. It's so weird to me to see the real life Selena when I'm so mentally accustomed to the visual image of Jennifer Lopez's portrayal of the singer. So I can't wait to sit down and watch it. But being Eddie, I was born in 91. So I grew up, with my family watching the classics, if you will, from the 80s, the Coming to Americas, the Beverly Hills Cops, and, reruns of Saturday Night Live. I remember when my mom got a VHS of, like Saturday Night Live, the best of Eddie Murphy, and then watching that VHS all the time from the James Brown in the hot tub when he did Stevie Wonder. And I remember the first time I saw Delirious. I remember it used to play on like HBO or Showtime, and I just remember the ice cream, or the Goonie Goo. But then I remember in college I got the DVD and watched it, and it was really funny. So being Eddie, first of all, I love when people get their flowers when they're alive, whether it be some sort of like, a ceremony televised that's honoring them, or in this case, a documentary. I love when a person is still here walking this earth and is able to tell their story their way. Now, who knows, maybe in 10, 15, 20, 30 years, there's going to be like a Eddie Murphy biopic. But in terms of his life, yeah, I'm glad, in career, I'm glad we were able to get this documentary. It felt good because you were able, if you're an Eddie Murphy fan, you pretty much know everything there is to know about Eddie in terms of how he got his start in comedy, and then got picked, when somebody saw him doing a stand-up sketch or a stand-up set at a comedy club, got invited to SNL. He blew up, and then that's when he went to movies, but he never gave up stand-up. And then, of course, he did his thing with Delirious and Raw, and went to the movies where the big bucks were, and then boom. It's kind of funny because people always talk about, man, Eddie Murphy, how can you say he's a legendary comic when he only has two stand-ups? I mean, that's like saying, oh, well, after Thriller, Michael Jackson stopped doing music. How is he a legend and he only did those two albums? If you don't count the Motown and Epic albums he did with his brothers and the solo stuff he did before Off the Wall. But it's like, if he only did Off the Wall and Thriller and he quit, and it's like, how is he a legend? Well, Thriller's the best-selling album of all time. It's just like with Biggie. It's like, man, how do you say Biggie is one of the greatest MCs and only had like 2 or 3 albums? It's like, well, if there are solid bodies of work, I mean, come on now. But okay, side note, in the comments below, let me know what stand-up do you think is better? Delirious or Raw? Delirious or Raw? Which Eddie Murphy special do you think is better? Now, to me, Delirious is just legendary. I mean, the red suit alone, the red leather jumpsuit he was wearing, I feel like was as iconic to Eddie Murphy as the Thriller jacket is to Michael Jackson. That's just my opinion. And when it came to Raw, I really loved the first chunk of that stand-up. But up until the point when Eddie was doing his Bill Cosby impression, because, the first part of the set was him reacting to the overwhelming success of Delirious, and talking about how different comics and these people would contact me about it and this, that, and the third, and he talked about how he got a call from Bill Cosby and he rushed to the phone excited, and then Bill was chastising him about his language because, my son went to see your show and he came back and he was cursing and whatnot. And it's like, filth, flarn, filth. And the thing is, after that point in the special, when he did a Bill Cosby and Richard Pryor impression, which were really good, spot on, I don't think the inflection of his voice changed for the remainder of the set. Because to me, it's like at that point when he did the Bill followed by the Richard Pryor impression, it's like Eddie stayed there. Like his voice from that point in the special felt like just nonstop. Oh, he's doing a Cosby-like voice the entire time. I don't know if that's just a me thing. I have not watched that special probably close to 8 or 9 years. I just remember I watched it twice when I got the DVD, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the most memorable part of that was I remember talking about McDonald's, wanting McDonald's, and then your mom says, "Oh, we got McDonald's at home." And then that, yeah. Raw, I think isn't that like the comedy special or movie that has the record for the most F words, the F bombs in it? I think that's like the only memorable thing about it. But either way, Delirious to me, I thought was better. So yeah, just seeing him sit down and just reflect on his life and career, it was great. I mean, yeah, there are a few things I didn't know, like when it came to Dreamgirls, he did his role as Jimmy Early, and the reason that role excelled, that people are like, yo, he should have won an Oscar for that, which he should have, was because he literally had just gone through the finalized his divorce with his former wife at the time, which explains why it was so emotional. And I'm like, dang, that hit hard. That hits hard. And yeah, I remember around the time of Oscar So White, that was the first time I ever saw that clip of Eddie Murphy talking at the Oscars about, black people not getting recognized. And then he says like, yeah, that could be the reason why I never won an Oscar. So I know for Saturday Night Live, iconic in itself. What's funny though? I learned more about Eddie Murphy watching interviews he did leading up to the Being Eddie documentary dropping on Netflix. So basically, when he was doing press, runs on different platforms, because YouTube would recommend it to me. Like, I didn't know about that time he was asked to host a show. Yeah, he was the first cast member asked to host a show, and he went live from New York City. It's the Eddie Murphy Show. And people went nuts. Like, yo, how could he say that? And I do know about the whole when David Spade said something about, a falling star. And he had a beef with SNL. And that's why, Eddie never went back until a few years ago, when he did like basically a run through of the classic hits. Even though that Elf sketch was probably my favorite sketch of the night. Yeah, it was. You could just tell Eddie was back there to have fun. And yeah, they go through the laundry list, the CVS receipt linked list of his movies and various projects he's worked on. And it's great. It just seems like, he's at a point in life where he's just chill. He's just Eddie. And that's great, because even if the man never did another project, he's done far more than enough, but he's still out there working. Now, granted, despite growing up, in the 90s and early 2000s, it's like, I'm more familiar with that work than his work in the past decade, because I just think it's the oversaturation of, like, for example, it seems like every time you go on Netflix, there's like 20 new comedy specials, or there are a bunch of new movies and everything. And I do know about what is it? You People, Dolomite. There was a couple other movies he was in, but they really didn't show up on my radar, so to speak. But the fact that, he's still out there doing his thing is great. And, just hearing from other comedians and actors who were either influenced by Eddie or, it's just the fact that he put so many people on, which is a great thing in itself. But also, I didn't know, he paid for Rick James' funeral. Who else? It was 3 people. I know he bought the headstone for Buckwheat, which is, very touching, considering, Buckwheat was one of Eddie's most famous characters from SNL. And who was the other person? Was it Muhammad Ali? Maybe I'm tripping. I think it was Muhammad Ali, Rick James, and the headstone of buckwheat. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. I know I got the Rick James and buckwheat thing right, but either way, he talked about how, hey, he never really did drugs or anything like that. And, sometimes he'd be at parties, with like SNL cast members or other comedians. And when he saw Robin Williams and, other folks pulling out the drugs and whatnot, he's like, nah, I'm out. So, and people talk about, yeah, it's like you ever see Eddie at a party, he's like, quiet in the corner, drinking Coca-Cola or something like that. And, yeah, it's just amazing. It's just amazing to see how much he's done. But I really do love the fact that he does mention stand-up. And if he did do it again, he would do it because it's fun. But like a lot of people say, it's like, hey, he's been out for like, what? Over 3 decades now. And people would love to get his perspective on things. And I'll say this much. When it comes to an Eddie Murphy stand-up, we know the guy can do it because, like, when he gets up to accept awards and whatnot, people stop and listen, and he'll go on for like 5 to 10 minutes, and it's like a hilarious set full of impressions and whatnot. But the thing is, I respect Eddie not doing it until he feels like he wants to do it. And most importantly, he's not going to just get up there and do it for a fat paycheck. Because, yeah, if the man did a Netflix special, number one, we know Netflix would pay through the nose for it. But number two, I love that Eddie is like, nah, I'm not. Even if I want to get back into it, I know I got to stretch my legs out. I go to the clubs and work on my act. I respect that so much because, like I said, it's so easy for people to just say, you know what, I'm just going to go up here, talk for like an hour, get this like 8-figure check and go about my life. No, he wants to make sure if he does make his comeback, is going to be right because he only did those 2 specials, those 2 legendary specials, and it means more to him to not go up there unless he feels ready and to not do another special unless it holds up to the other ones. And let's be real here. Eddie is funny when he's clean in terms of, no foul language and stuff like that. But given the climate we live in with the whole political correctness and, people being easily offended. Because wasn't he on a press tour for something? I forgot what movie it was, but he was asked about, Delirious, where he talked about the F word, referring to gay people. I think he apologized for it or something. And people are like, man, Eddie, come on now. Because that's something that was from the freaking 80s. And I know in terms of the internet age, if the special comes out, people will immediately compare it to, man, this ain't no Delirious. This ain't no Raw. And of course, if a comic puts out one thing or an actor puts out one thing that isn't an instant hit with fans, you know what? I never thought this person was funny anyway. I never thought this person could act anyway. And that's just ridiculous. But yeah, for me, I think when it comes to Eddie Murphy, he could just sit down, talk, and just be funny. It's kind of like with Chris Tucker. When he did a Netflix special, I remember I was working at the call center at the time, being excited, like, okay, I know what my plans are for this weekend. As soon as I clock out Friday, I'm going to chill. Saturday night, I'll watch that special. When I tell you it was a struggle, the only reason I made it through that special was because I was a Chris Tucker fan. And I'm like, you know what? I'll do it for Chris. But the funniest part of that special was when he was just telling Michael Jackson stories. And the funny thing is, Netflix knew this because to really promote the special when it dropped, they released a clip on their YouTube channel and social media of him telling a Michael Jackson story. And I said to myself, yep, Chris Tucker could just get on stage and talk about misadventures with Michael Jackson for like 5 hours. And that would be some of the funniest stuff in the world. Mainly due to the fact that, well, for one, he knew Michael well. And it's just amazing to learn more about Michael the man, not the icon, the king of pop, the superstar. I mean, if we're being honest here, Chris could just tell stories about any of the celebrity friends he knows. Those are some of my favorite. That's the thing. Chris Tucker, his stand-up specials don't do it for me. But when he's doing interviews on talk shows or radio and he's talking about, different things he's done with other celebrities, those are the funniest Chris Tucker moments outside of when he did his legendary performance at Def Comedy Jam. So I feel like with Eddie Murphy, when it comes to stand-up, he can give his 2 cents on current events in the world. But to me, I think it will be, this is controversial. I think an Eddie Murphy comedy comedy special where he just talks about what's going on in the world today. Because it's funny, he did mention how he does impressions, but for the life of him, he cannot do a Trump impression to save his life. I think it will be a lot funnier than Dave Chappelle. Hear me out. Mainly due to me personally, the Dave Chappelle, the last like 3 to 4 specials I did not really love because it just felt it was nonstop. Dave versus the woke LGBT, the alphabet community mob, as opposed to Dave the comedian. And it's like, hey, I get it, freedom of speech and whatnot, and people are too easily offended. But as a Dave Chappelle fan, you know, I loved his earlier stand-up. And I mean, even I think the first couple of his Netflix specials were good, but then it just got to the point where it's like, yeah, it's like he's standing up to the woke mob, which again, I get it. But when I pay for my Netflix subscription to watch that special, I hope it lands, but it doesn't. But yeah, with being Eddie Murphy or being Eddie, I enjoyed it. If you are an Eddie Murphy fan, I would recommend it. I really would, because he talks about the ups and downs, like, you know, from being at the height of his career to stepping away from the spotlight after 2 or 3 of his movies were flops. And he's like, yeah, you know, I want to kick back. But yeah, dude's funny. Seems like a very genuine man. Good dude. Good dude. All right. Well, with that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What were some of your highlights of the Eddie Murphy documentary? And make sure you like and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next video.